Welcome back, guys. And those were some excerpts from the budget speech presented by, of course, the Honourable Minister of Finance himself. And that was a very long speech. It took about 3 hours to get through the whole program. So there were a lot of things that he mentioned. We can't, of course, get into every single aspect of the budget, but we can touch on the salient points. So we're going to do that with our guests, who we're going to have via Skype. Let's get into conversation with our next guest, who is Associate Professor Dr. Mohamed Eskandar Shah Mohamed Rasid, who is the College of Islamic, who's with the College of Islamic Studies at the Hamad bin Khalifa University. He's also, which is also a part of the Qatar Foundation. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Morning, Terrence.
Good morning. Welcome to the show. I'm sure you've had some time to kind of take a look at the budget. I don't know, in the 2 days, did you manage to read it all, or were you kind of looking at the salient points?
No, I managed to watch the budget live. That was interesting because we have, I think the budget was telecast live through the internet. So managed to do that. And I also managed to review some of the salient points as well.
So what did you think of the size of the budget and the direction?
All right, it's basically expected because last year we set the tone of expansionary budget. We had probably one of the humongous budgets in the last 10 years. And then this year we follow suit because the need to government, for government to expand and keep spending to revive the economy, it seems to be the pertinent argument right now. But eventually, we have to sort it out. We have to bring down the deficits. I think the deficit will start a worrying problem 1 or 2 years from now, especially to finance all this big budget. And we also had a big stimulus package too. Apparently, according to the minister, total stimulus package, including moratorium, EPF, and everything, so it's about 510 billion. So if you put it into perspective, 510 plus 2 years of budget, about probably 650. So we are probably looking at injection in total, holistically, about 1.1 trillion for the last 2 years, 2020 and also 2021, and then, and including 2022, probably roughly a big amount. So there is a huge capital injections. So hopefully this will boost consumptions, boost recovery. More importantly, boost sentiment as well. And not forgetting, what is more important after that is that we have a serious long-term reform strategy to bring down the deficits and obviously to broaden our tax base. Eventually we have to pay anyway. Someone has to pay. Right. The argument is that you borrow today, someone has to pay.
Absolutely.
So those are things that it's always at the back of people's mind, including mine as well as the economic analyst. So it's a big budget, but more importantly, people really want to look at how much this impact going to bring to Malaysian economy, especially to boost recovery and also bring us out of the sluggishness that we're having right now.
All right. Of course, just now, Dr. Eskandar, I touched a bit on the need for Bantuan Keluarga Malaysia package. And obviously, there's this argument also about, give a man a fish, and then he will eat for a day, teach a man how to fish, and then the man will eat every day. With that also, and I'm sure there are those out there who do not really understand the need or why do we need this kind of stimulus package. Maybe you can help us understand better on the Bantuan Keluarga Malaysia.
I guess Bantuan Keluarga Malaysia is a form of rebranding, right? So we had Bantuan Satu Malaysia, and then we had Bantuan Prihatin, and now we want to send a message of inclusivity, that everyone in this thing together. So I would probably look at this as a rebranding, but obviously the amount seems to get better as well. At the current conditions, obviously some elements of cash transfer is required to support people, especially the vulnerable group of society. But it's just that what is worrying right now for me is that the amount of group within this category, apparently 9.6 million people, household, will be receiving funding for support from the government. So that is almost, I would probably say that half of the household in Malaysia. So we really have to look at it from two perspectives. Number one, this cash transfer will actually minimize some of the impact that they're having, the fragility, the vulnerability, especially during this pandemic. We do admire the fact that more money that been given to support consumption at their level. But at the same time, we also have to figure out is that like what you have said, Nabil, is spot on. Because they can't be receiving the support from the government continuously. There will be a time where we need to really look at how to empower them, how to strengthen them, how to actually bring them out from this group and become from receiver to contributor.
Right.
This is more important because we need to collect more tax from the people anyway. And right now, only small portion of people in Malaysia are paying tax. And we don't have much avenue to boost our income. So we really need to look at it. So this has to be tied up with our small and medium enterprise agenda, micro agenda. I think there are a lot of initiative as well under Tekun, under BSN, under Agrobank, and under DFI, which has been announced. So it's very important that moving on, my opinion is that, okay, the cash transfer can become a conditional cash transfer. All right? So we'll support you, but eventually you have to show some KPI. So that KPI means that, there is a business opportunity that you take, there's an empowerment activity that you get involved, so that you will be moving from receiver to contributor. So this is basically my argument because I'm not sure how long that we can sustain this, but obviously it is required for now. But there must be a long-term strategy and vision when it comes to cash transfer.
You're right, and the socialists out there will vehemently disagree with you because they want a more socialist-based society. They want us to move towards a more charitable nation, but they miss the obvious point that revenue is shrinking. So let's talk about revenue. In terms of increasing the tax base, I've always been for the argument to impose or reintroduce GST, but what this budget has done is it's actually introduced something of a windfall tax, not really a windfall tax, a prosperity tax maybe would be the best way to term it. So companies that are producing in excess of 100 million ringgit in profit per year will now have to pay an addition on that profit. However, this is across the board and not specific to any one industry. I mean, I think we kind of missed the boat with windfall tax directed at the glove industry because the glove industry is no longer making that kind of money. We may be looking at the oil and gas industry because of the higher oil prices. I'm not sure. But pre-existing companies that have always been making that huge amount of money now have to pay an additional amount of tax. I don't know how happy they're going to be with that. What do you think of this strategy of a prosperity tax?
Thanks, Terrence. Talking about tax is always a sensitive issue, right?
Right.
People like to receive, but eventually when it's time to pay, they always, some kind of resistance as well. But we probably have to understand the economy from the whole ecosystem, because it's not a zero-sum game, because you have to talk about value creation. So value creation only comes from investments, only come from research and development, only come from creating infrastructure, so on and so forth. So the company, from my perspective, is that the company have to understand is that they can become more competitive if the government create better infrastructure. For example, let me just give you put it in the context. So let's say we build a better ports, or more efficient ports. So instead of waiting for 2 days, you can actually cut down the supply chain to 1 day, for example. Today, supply chain is a big problem. You probably know that today many companies have to pay huge amount of logistic costs to move their goods and services, and Malaysia is a trading nation. So we need better infrastructure. And second thing is that we need better R&D as well for vaccination, digitalization, or even logistic. Just take a simple thing, better road management. A lot of Malaysians always complain about, we always have, holes everywhere, right? So we need better infrastructure. So the point is that, a company will never make money, or they will not able to make this much of money without all the support that they're getting from the ecosystem. And someone has to pay for it. Is it individual or is it company, and so on and so forth. So we have to really look at it as an investment rather than looking at expenses. Because we are building a better investment for future generation for us to compete. Because competition is going to be a lot more harder because
Oh,
in the
yes.
past, it was only Malaysia, maybe Singapore. So now we are talking about Laos, we are talking about Vietnam, we are talking about Indonesia coming out. So what is our advantage, right? What is our value added? Is it our human capital, or is it our infrastructure, or is it our food, for example? Or it's fantastic to live in Malaysia because our food is... So we need to have something, right? So all these require huge amount of investment because you need to pay the talent, you need to pay for the technology, so on and so forth. So the company must understand that, yes, it might be one-off, but this is, you can say, since you use the word social, you can also say that tax is an investment of social contribution to the nation. You have to look at it from that perspective. And I think eventually it's going to be a win-win situation for everyone because end of the day, this is always about making a better Malaysia. But more importantly, I think accountability in terms of how we spend taxpayers' money are more even crucial nowadays.
Right.
Because reporting and transparency are becoming key in terms of making sure that whatever we ask from people, we spend it for them. So from people to people, government is only facilitation and intimidation. That's my view, Terrence, and also Nabil.
Right. So, but what do you think of the notion of reintroducing GST? Because if you talk about transparency, there's no more transparent system than the goods and services tax, as opposed to what we have now, which may have contributed to a loss of revenue. I mean, the moment it was introduced, the SST already contributed to a loss of revenue. Do you think we should reintroduce that before the next budget? Because I'm not sure if we're actually covering all our bases in terms of increasing the revenue base.
No, I think we definitely have to revisit those ideas. It may not be only one of the solutions. It may be one of the options that we have. Because as I said, the point that many countries in the world implement GSTs, all right? We need to really look at how we want to put it in the context of Malaysia. The good thing about GST, I think you have said it very, rightly as well. We can make the tax base more broader. I think everyone will eventually contribute. Either you are foreign workers or whether you are local workers, whether you are in the formal sector or whether you are in the informal sector. Because right now there's a big amount of shadow economy going on. So there is a loss of revenue. There are a lot of informal sector where we are not able to trace, for example, how much revenue they're getting, how much cost they're getting. So one way we have to really look at is that how to bring all these sectors into the main ecosystem. And of course, in many countries, they implement GST. But if Malaysia wants to implement GST or they have other better options and everything, that is basically up to the tax expert to really debate on it. But my argument is that there is a big loss of not formalizing the informal sector. There is a big loss in terms of not mainstreaming the shadow economy.
Right.
So we really look at that and actually broaden our tax base, like what you have said, something that we need to ponder on, of course.
All right. Other than that, Doctor, recently there has been a spotlight on the matter of how we treat women.
Right.
Because recently there was a controversial interview that was broadcasted on air in which an actor reveals about the details behind the shooting of a rape scene. So we've been talking about how we should treat women better, especially in the workplace. And I think Budget 2022 is a reflection of that because they are preparing to fund extra monies in order to fund enforcements against domestic violence. So maybe pertaining to the women and their safety and security, maybe you can talk about how Budget 2022 is dealing on that matter.
Okay. All right. I may not be the expert on this matter, but let me just give my thoughts. From economic perspective, women involvement will definitely boost our GDP. I think this is not no-brainer. All right, and study all over the world have proven that you empower women, you get them more involved in the economic activity, there will be a huge jump in terms of our GDP outcome and also GDP contributions as well. So that is the plus. But now the most important thing is that how do we get the best out of our women talent? All right. So creating ecosystem I think, is very important. So when we talk about women, right, mainly people will talk about finding a balance between career and also family. Apparently, they have this notion for whatever reasons. So we need to make sure that that ecosystem is there, social support is there, child support is there. I think that's very important. And like what NABIL said, more importantly for them is actually safety. I'm not trying to make comparison. Obviously, cities which are a lot more safer attract the best talents. You take two most competitive country in the world. One is our neighbor, which is Singapore, and the other one, which is Switzerland. So according to IMD report, global competitive report, and most of the innovative idea is actually coming from these two countries. And apparently people have done studies as well why a lot of talents are migrating to some of these countries, and they figure out is that the reason why they go there, not because they are just getting big salary. In fact, salary is not even one of the top three reasons. The top three reasons, in fact, were education for their children. Number two is safety and security. And third one is actually traffic. All right. So this is quite surprising, right? And because like what you said, if you have to spend 1 hour on the road, how are you going to go back if you have child got emergency, right? How do you now working from home, maybe flexible and so on and so forth. But if you remember those days, maybe Nabil was quite young, during my days in the early 90s and everything, traffic in KL before LRT was a bit horrible. Now with MRT and all these infrastructure things were better. So the point that I'm trying to make, that you are actually spot on to say that, we need to ensure their safety. We need to ensure their security. Now with this pandemic, we can reset and look at employment flexibility. And we need to really blend in all these things. And we need to look at women as the talent, as part of the biggest asset that we have. In fact, a lot of girls are doing well in the universities as well.
Absolutely.
Probably Nabil knows this, maybe Terrence knows this. You go to the university, you probably gonna see more girls taking up tertiary education, much more skill. So government has to really look at these issues very seriously. Family fabric and society are also very important. So we blending in all this, I think we can create a better future for Malaysia for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you, Professor, for joining us on this show. Thank you for sharing your views, Associate Professor Dr. Mohamed Eskandar. It's been a pleasure talking to you, sir. We would love to talk to you more on other points of the budget, but unfortunately we're out of time. So thank you very much for your time this morning, sir.
No problem. It's a pleasure. Good morning. Thanks everyone. All the best, guys.
Have a great Sunday.
Thank